Good morning to our grade 12 learners. This morning, I'm going to examine the 2018 examination paper, that is paper 1, geography, and we are going to look at question number 3.5. Question number 3.5 talks about where learners have to study the statistics which relates to the Western Cape export products. Before we attempt to move any further, we have to analyze the words that are in the question. Firstly, the word export. Export means we are selling to some other area, that we are selling to some other country. And export is always good, because the more we export, it means that we're earning more foreign capital, and that money can now be used to upgrade the facilities in our country, such as we could build roads, we could build hospitals, we could build housing, we could build more schools, and such like activities. Number 2, export is also good because export means it's creating more employment. It means more people will now be gainfully occupied, which means that more people have a higher purchasing power. And that now has a multiplier effect. Because people are earning more money, you'll be able to buy clothing. And those persons that are working in the clothing industry are also going to benefit. So we have a chain reaction. And the word we use, we have a multiplier effect. And of course, our living standards are going to improve. The government is going to be happy because it's now going to earn more revenue from taxation. And again, that money is going to be used to upgrade the infrastructure of our country. So exports are always good. Then you're speaking about Western Cape. Note that in our country, we have 4 industrialized areas. The biggest of which is the Gauteng region, also referred to as the PWV area, which stands for Pretoria, Witwatersrand, Vereniging area. And yes, you are right, those 3 areas have merged. It's a conurbation, as you learned earlier in settlement. So there we have the PWV region, which is the biggest area. Almost 50% of the country's factories are located in the PWV region. And of course, you'll speak more about that as this term progresses. Then we have the Durban Pinetown area. Number 3, we have the Port Elizabeth Uitenhage industrialized area. And of course, now we're speaking about the Southwestern Cape region. Now, let's examine the statistics that we have. And there we have our statistics. Right? So what we note in this table is that we're exporting raw material, such as your citrus, your apples and pears, your grapes, which means that these items here have not been processed. We're exporting them in their raw form. The disadvantage is not earning us lots of foreign capital. We're also exporting manufactured items. For example, we're exporting refined petroleum. We're exporting wine. So the country should export more. We're now using the grapes to export the wine. We're exporting iron and steel, which is now a manufactured product made from iron ore. It will earn us more money. We're exporting fruit juice. We're exporting engine parts. Again, it's always positive to export manufactured products because of the positive spin-offs, such as earning us more foreign capital, creating more work, and making a bigger contribution to our country's gross domestic product. Let's examine the questions which we are asked in this particular section. Question number 1, 351. Name one product representing the primary and one product from the secondary economic sectors. Let's pause and let's speak about the country's economic sectors. As we know, there are 4 economic sectors that contribute to our country's economy. One is the primary sector. Then we have the secondary sector. And yes, you are right. We have the tertiary sector, and the 4th one being the quaternary sector. The primary sector is involved in the extraction of raw materials from the Earth's surface. And here, fishing, farming, hunting, mining are examples of these activities. The secondary economic sector is where we're processing these raw materials. We're adding value to these raw materials. The tertiary economic sector is where we're involved in providing a service. The teacher, the doctor, the lawyer, the taxi driver, the taxi conductor, they're all involved in providing a service. And the 4th economic activity is the quaternary economic activity. And quaternary is involved in high-tech services. Right? Somebody involved in the IT field, for example, using lots of modern equipment would now be classified in this particular economic sector. So, simple question, 2 marks easy, 1 product from the primary sector and 1 from the secondary economic sector. You go back to our diagram and you can take, for example, from your primary sector, you got citrus. Primary sector, apples and pears. Primary sector, grapes. And yes, you are right. Wine is going to be an example of the secondary product. Why? Because we have used the grapes and we manufactured wine. We have used the iron ore and we have manufactured iron and steel. Fruit juice will be classified as a secondary product. Yes, you are right. We have taken the apples and the pears and the grapes and the citrus and we have manufactured the fruit juice. So we're able to score 2 marks quite easily in a question like that. Question number 352. Which primary product shows an increase in value after it has been processed? Now, important, the word processed means that it's been manufactured. The word processed means that you've taken the raw material and you've made something out of it. And by doing so, you've added value to it in terms of money. So let's go and check the table again. And you will note that the link here is between, let's take wine and grapes. That's your link. Because grapes as a product is worth 6 billion rands. If we export grapes in its raw form, it'll earn us 6 billion rands. But we're exporting wine as well. And wine is earning the country 8.6 billion rands. So already you can see that grapes is used to make wine. And by taking the grapes and turning that into wine, we're able to increase the value of the grapes by 2.6 billion rand. Therefore, that would be your answer. Now, if you look at fruit juice, we're using the citrus to make fruit juice. We're using the apples and pears to make fruit juice. But the apples and pears as a raw material is worth far more than our fruit juice. So there's our answer. Right? So question number 352, which product shows an increase in value, and the product is going to be our grapes. Question number 353, calculate the total revenue from the export of fresh fruit. Right, the export of fresh fruit. We're now going to check. Where's a fresh fruit? Citrus is a fresh fruit. So using our calculator, we'll put in the figure 8.6. Will we add wine? The response should be no, because wine is not the fresh fruit. Wine is a finished product. We cannot add that. We cannot add that. Can we add this? Absolutely correct. Apples and pears. And yes, you are right. We're going to be adding the grapes as well. So you add that, 8.6. You'll add that, which should give you 14.6 billion rands. And you add that 6 billion, it should give you 20.6 billion rands. And there's your response here. You look at your responses. There's our response here, 20.6 billion rands. Now you cannot just write 20.6. The examiner will not give you marks for that. You must show respect for the unit, that is rand, and of course it's billion. We now go on to question number 354. Why is fruit processing such a major industry in the Southwestern Cape? I told you earlier, the Southwestern Cape is one of the core industrialized areas in our country. There are 4. Very quickly, the Southwestern Cape, the Port Elizabeth, Uitenhage area, the Durban Pinetown area, and the biggest of them all is the Pretoria, Witwatersrand, Vereniging area, which we call the PWV or the Gauteng region. The question we asked for 4 marks and 2 points times 2 marks each. Why is fruit processing such a major industry in this area? Some of us may have gone to the Cape area. Others may have read about this. You watch movies about the Cape area, and you will note that in the Cape area, fruit farming, and in particular grapes, is a major product. So why is fruit farming such an important activity in this area? And you'll note, there's your responses, the climate is suitable for planting grapes. Now, as we know, the Southwestern Cape area has a Mediterranean climate. What does it mean? It's guaranteed of winter rainfall. So you get 2 marks for saying that. Another 2 marks for saying the Southwestern Cape has lots of workers, a large labor force. And fruit farming requires large amounts of manual labor. And of course, another important reason why the processing of fruit is such an important activity in the Southwestern Cape region. Because Southwestern Cape doesn't have lots of mineral resources. And because of a lack of mineral resources, Southwestern Cape is now forced to depend on fruit as a raw material. So any two of these answers would have scored us 4 marks. Our last question, question 3.5, we are required to discuss. Now, discuss means we have to say something more about it. We can't just list. Discuss 2 factors that support the export of products from the Western Cape. Again, 4 marks. What makes it possible? Why are we exporting? What factors promote the exporting of products from the Southwestern Cape area? There's our answers. You'll note that Southwestern Cape has the harbor. And the harbor is going to allow us to export to our international markets. There's it there, 2 marks. So through the harbor in Western Cape, we're able to export 2 marks. We are producing top quality products in Western Cape. And because we're producing high quality products, there's going to be a demand for these products, especially in the Northern Hemisphere. Noting that when they're having winter, we are in summer. And during the winter seasons, they are unable to grow the kind of crops that is required. And we will now be able to export these crops to them. Of course, the other reason can be used. We do have an excellent road and rail link with Southwestern Cape and other parts of our country. What does it mean? It makes it possible for us to be able to export, or to transport rather, these products to other areas. So again, the question talks about what factors support, what factors promote the export of products from the Western Cape. We go back to our answers. We have the harbor facilities, which allows it to export. Now there's your discussion. We've got the harbor, and we're able to export to other countries. Cape Town has international airports, again, which provides links to major economies in the West. In the West, meaning in the Northern Hemisphere. We're also using containers. There's the containers that are refrigerated. And this makes it possible to transport our fruit to the global markets in a fresh condition. So there you got your answers. Any 2 of these 4 is going to score us 4 marks. If one goes back to question number 3.5, you'd be able to score many marks in this question. Right, let's now make our way to question number 3.6. Figure 3.6 talks about small-scale farming. Again, the focus is on farming. What is farming? It's a primary activity. Farming can include crop. Farming can include stock. And if you have both crop and stock, it now makes it mixed farming. Again, it's an example of a primary economic activity where we are extracting our resources from nature. Now, I say small-scale farming. Now, we haven't gone to our source material as yet, but we know that it's telling us the farming is small-scale, which means that small land could be used for farming, which would mean that farming is done by hand, where farmers are using traditional farming methods, old-fashioned farming methods, where farmers don't have large amounts of capital, money to invest in highly mechanized farming. Perhaps farming here is engaged on a subsistence level. What does that mean? Where people are farming for themselves in the main. Will they sell? The answer is yes. Why will you sell? Because we're living in a moneyed economy. And money is important to be able to acquire other things in life. So yes, again, it's small-scale farming. Now note, we haven't gone to our photographs yet, but we're able to interrogate the question. Now we can look at our source material. And there's your photograph. Right? Small-scale farming. There you can see that these workers are involved in farming, perhaps on a small scale. They're using pigs here, perhaps as fences, as boundaries. Few of them are working. It's not mechanized. Farming is done using primitive farming methods, the hoe. We don't see tractors anywhere here. We don't see an efficient irrigation scheme anywhere. So these individuals that are farming for themselves in the main. Let's go and check what kinds of questions the examiners want us to speak about. It says, define the term small-scale farming. Now, it's farming on a small piece of land. It's a concept. The examiners are quite fussy when it comes to marking concepts. So farming is taking place on a small scale, on a small piece of land, and yes, this farming can be commercial or it can be subsistence. So note that small-scale farming does not only mean subsistence farming. It could mean that farming is also taking place at a scale where farmers are selling surplus produce. So there would be an element of commercial farming taking place here. That'll score us a mark. To get back to our question, what evidence in the photograph suggests that these farmers are small-scale farmers? What indicates that these farmers are small-scale farmers? Manual labor is used. The farmers are using traditional farming methods. There's no evidence of machines being used. They're planting a variety of crops, hence the word mixed farming could be taking place. There's no infrastructure in this area. Infrastructure means there's no roads, there's no power lines, there's no irrigation schemes. And the absence of these things indicate to us that these farmers here are involved in small-scale farming. And like we said earlier, perhaps they're involved in farming on a subsistence level. But any one idea will score some mark. To get back to our question, and the question number 363. Why can one say that these small-scale farmers are farming the land intensively? So there's intensive farming. Intensive farming means that every available piece of land is used. That's intensive farming, where farmers are making use of every piece of land. Like we heard earlier, these farmers are involved in planting a variety of crops. And the advantage of planting a variety of crops means that should something go amiss with a particular crop, they are able to depend on the other crops as sources of revenue. Right? So again, the question we're asking is, what indicates that farmers are involved in intensive farming? Intensive would mean that every piece of land is used to its maximum. 2 marks. One idea, 2 marks. The profit margin. The profit margin. of these farmers is going to be low. The question is clear. The profit margin is going to be low. And we are required to explain why the profit margin is going to be low. Now, again, from the picture, we can see that these farmers are involved in small-scale farming. They're using primitive farming methods. And as a result, there is going to be smaller profits. They're planting for themselves. There are less products being sold. And perhaps they don't have the income to purchase the fertilizer, the machines, the chemicals to be able to prevent the damage to their crops. So here are some of the responses that the examiners are going to be accepting. And there's a 2 marks. The question was, why will the profit margin be small? And there's it here. They're farming on a small scale, 2 marks. So A, first reason, they're farming on a small scale. There are many farmers working on a small piece of land. What does it mean? Many farmers mean they have to share the small income amongst themselves. Yields might be low. The yields might be low. Again, why would they be low? Perhaps the use of traditional farming methods. They're producing less. They haven't got the money to purchase fertilizer, chemicals. They got no access to a market to go and sell their products. So again, it's the issue of food insecurity. And because of these factors here, people don't have access to sufficient, nutritious food. Right, so with that, we look at the end of question number 3.6.4. 365 in a paragraph. Now, paragraph questions are 4 ideas, 2 marks each, 8 marks. Outline the problems that these farmers are going to experience. Again, you can borrow ideas from right through here. You can borrow ideas from right through. What problems these farmers are going to experience? Noting that these farmers are small-scale farmers. They have no access to capital, money. Now, we had come across this question earlier when we discussed the rural settlement section. Again, there's a whole range of answers. Let's choose 4 of these answers. What problems these small-scale farmers or these farmers are going to experience? And there's your idea. First one, they're making use of manual labor. They don't have access to modern farming techniques. There's a there. So the problem is they have limited knowledge of scientific farming methods. Perhaps they have no knowledge of how to use crops that are modified genetically. They have no access to an irrigation system or scheme, and therefore they now have to water crops by hand, by watering can. It takes a long time. It's a tedious process. Their land is going to be overused. The land is going to be overused. The soil becomes tired. Soil erosion takes place. And the soil is now poor, decrease in soil fertility. And that means the crops are not going to grow well. The issue of flooding and droughts will be other major concerns. The physical health of the workers will suffer. Workers are overworked, noting that the males may have left the rural areas to seek employment in the urban areas. So farming is now left in the hands of the older men, the children, and the women. Theft could be a possibility. Insects and birds are pests. They will damage the crops. They have no insurance. they have no money to insure their crops. So when you have a drought and floods, these farmers are ruined. So there you have, again, you want 4 ideas, any 4 ideas, and that'll score you 8 marks in a question like this. So with that, we come to the end of question number 3.6. Right? So there's our answers there, and that ends the question number 3.6. And with that, we end question number 3. Right? So in a short while, we are going to be spending some time on question number